Let's get ready to rumble.
Here we go, episode 71 of the Hibs Ramble. Do not adjust your sets. I am back for the second week in a row. And back this week is Liam. How you doing, mate?
I'm very well, mate. I'm feeling very blessed, very lucky to be in your presence this evening. So thanks for coming back, man.
Yeah, no, it's good. I thought I'd dip my toes in the water with the intellectual one last week, and then we'll bring the idiot back on this week.
Mark's no on, mate.
That's at least I'm here. Eh? Where are you, Cantona? Shaun, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Always love being here. The original threesome.
Well, not really. It's not really. If we want to get technical, it's not really. But
nah, you're not really part of the original threesome, to be honest, Shaun. So
we'll not go down that slope. So good result at the weekend. Hibernian going along halfway along the M8 to the Tony Mack. I think when the team came out, probably a bit of confused faces. Obviously, there was 4 changes. Whitaker, Hanlon, Obita and Venti were back in at the expense of Campbell, Miller, Rocky and Stevenson. Bit surprised by that, Shaun, the number of changes, or do you think it was needed given the result we got on Wednesday at Parkhead?
I think it was definitely needed regardless of what happened at Parkhead during the week. Obviously, that performance wasn't anywhere near the level that I was expecting us to get. I think we needed to freshen it up. Personnel needed to be freshened up. Obviously, the shape and stuff wasn't, because he's very rigid with that, which I don't have an issue with. But I think the changes that he made were the right ones as well, considering the opposition and considering what we're going to be up against. So couldn't really complain too much. And I think we're at that time of year, we spoke about it in the last episode with the fixtures that we've got coming up and who we're going to be facing, that we're going to have to try and get more out of some players, and therefore to get more out of them, they're going to have to be on the pitch.
Yeah, Liam, given I think we've still got either the worst or the joint worst defensive record in the league with the 25, I think it's 25 goals conceded. Were you not thinking when you seen the team that's a big risk to change 3 of the back 4? And given how strong he's performed, I suppose strongly how 2 of them have performed in Miller and Rocky, obviously Lewis Miller dropping out of the squad completely, but no mention if he was injured or anything. Did you take the same view as me? Is it me changing 3, the effective back 5 was the right call to make?
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit unorthodox call for Monty to make, considering how Shaun said, how rigid and stubborn he is with his team lines and stuff. But they definitely needed to shake up the amount of games that we've had in quick succession, and you don't want your key players getting injured, so they needed to rotate it. But yeah, it kind of gave me the fear a wee bit that there were 3 changes out of the back 4. But it had to be done, I suppose. Again, I've still not seen anything about Lewis Miller, whether he was injured or what. So I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I think to be fair, the players that did drop out didn't exactly cover themselves in glory at Parkhead on Wednesday. And as Shaun, I think we spoke about it as well, that there's instances like for Rocky, for example, where he's been really, really good in games, but like when he had like Miovski just like ghosted off him completely and almost scored, like those lapses in concentration. Do you think it's maybe especially for him, it's maybe just a wee boot up the backside, given that he's got Paul Hanlon sitting waiting to take his spot, and we'll talk specifically about Paul later on, but it's also considering how strong a performance he put in as well.
Yeah, I think I don't think Rocky's going to underestimate the players that we have in the squad and the quality of what we've got in the squad, considering, especially under previous management, how in and out he was, and how he was kind of out of favour. So I don't think he's underestimating that aspect of it. I think he appreciates every minute he spends in a Hibs jersey, considering the journey that he's been on since he joined the club. But I do think that You touched on the lapses of concentration. There are little bits of his game that he still needs to improve on. Again, touching on the opposition and the type of players that we're potentially going to be up against, maybe playing out for the back as much, with Rocky being on his weaker side and taking it on his left foot. It might have been a little bit more awkward depending on the types of pressure that he was going to get from the Livingston attackers and the type of pitch that we're going to be on, and the environment with the weather and the wind and stuff like that. So I think Monty done well to take all of that into consideration, and basing that on all his changes, I think that's kind of maybe partly the reason for the majority of them as well. If any of our players are carrying any slight knocks and maybe not 100%, you don't really want to be risking them away to Livingston, who haven't won in 6 and not scored in 5, when we can maybe get away with bringing in players like Paul Hanlon, for example, and expect them to know what's needed to get a result away at Livi.
Aye, Liam, it's one of those games where, like, I don't think there's a point in dissecting it piece by piece, because it was one of those games that would likely get football stopped. Not because of, I wouldn't say because of us anyway, and I certainly think Livi gave us actually a half decent game, but more the conditions with the rain completely pushing it, and the wind kind of howling all afternoon. So there's only really a few major talking points. Just want to touch on, or not touch on really, but just obviously Martin Boyle, 300 games, his 75th goal. And I've seen a comment about Boyle on Twitter, actually. It's, you think back to the 2016, he didn't even play in the final. Whereas now, he would be, like, if we had this similar situation now, he'd be completely wrapped in cotton wool. I think in modern history, is it fair to say that he's probably the best value for money signing that we've had maybe since Ivan Sproul? Can you consider, like,
Why? Because
we gave Alex Harris away and got Boyle in return?
Yeah, well, you look at where Alex Harris is now. I mean, with all due respect to him, I mean, the last team that he was at was what, Edinburgh City. So
Berwick Rangers, I think he's at in the Lowland League.
Berwick Rangers now. So I mean,
Yeah.
It just tells you everything that you need to know. You know, who'd have thought that when we got Martin Boyle in all those years ago that he would turn into the player that he is now? You know, the boy had absolutely no end product, and you know, I wouldn't have been too gutted if we'd never got him back after that loan spell. But you know, value for money signing. I mean, absolutely. The fact that we punted him out to South Africa, no, we never, Saudi Arabia, got money for it and got him back in the end is ridiculous as well. I mean, the guy just screams Hibs. I think it wouldn't be off to call him a modern day Hibs legend, to be honest. I mean, the term gets thrown about an awful lot for my liking, but no, I think he really is. And yeah, like you say, value for money signing. Even more value for money for me than Sproul, because you look at the goals that he scored against Hearts. He's obviously part of the cup winning squad. So yeah, value for money.
Shaun, it's quite a thing, like, considering he's never really played consistently as a striker, and as Liam mentioned how poor his end product was in the beginning. 1 in 4 is actually not that bad, given that he's predominantly played as a winger, and even in his early days played sort of predominantly as a wing back as well.
Yeah, I was just going to make that exact point. I think if you look at the type of player he was when he arrived, in comparison to where he is now, like they're night and day, and there's such a dramatic change in his footballing ability and even his physical appearance and stuff as well. He's still obviously quite slight, but he's got a bit more hair up top. It's obviously improved his footballing ability. It's something I'm very, very jealous of. But nah, you're right in what you're saying regarding value for money as well. I think the amount of big moments that he's came up with during his time at Hibs. At the early part of his career, he stepped up, semi-final against Dundee United in the Scottish Cup. Big moment, pressure penalty, no problem for him. Obviously didn't play a part in the final, and rightly so. Like, we didn't need him at that point. The type of player that he was never going to get on the pitch, considering the way the game was going. But that didn't, dampen his spirits. Heavily involved in all the celebrations, and for that early part of his career, that's kind of what he was known for. He was known for what he was known for at the World Cup with the Australia squad in regards to just being there for the vibes and just enjoying it. He's got that about him, those different types of different type of personality when he's on and off the pitch, where obviously you hear all the players talking about how much he laughs and jokes, and he's, you know, wind-up merchant at training and at the club, and if you're on board with him, you're on board with the club and stuff like that. But then when he crosses that line, he's a completely different animal, especially in the last couple of years, where he can turn it on when he needs to. Big game.
He's so clinical.
Yeah, big game player for us now. And the finish that he produced at the weekend, I know it. I mean, I feel like it takes a slight deflection in a way, but the composure, the way he's opening up his body, angling it to the far corner, so if the keeper does get a touch, he parries it into hopefully a Hibs player's area. That finish there sums up his Hibs career, because 9 times out of 10 at the beginning of his Hibs career, he would have just taken a swing at it, hope for the best. It probably would have been a miss-hit. He probably would have skied it, scuffed it, whatever. Yep. Whereas now and I guess part of it comes with, you know, football and maturity as well. It was more of like a cultured finish, and he understands kind of what is expected from him. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if we asked for him to play at wing back now as well, he would do a very, very good job, because he'd be more intelligent now than he's ever been, especially with what he's been through, the players that he's played with, the coaches that he's been under, and the experience that he's got with the Australian national side as well.
Yeah, I think we'd probably all agree it was that season, the sort of one of the, I think the second season back in the Premier League under Lennon.
The gradient kit.
When he got the number 10. Yeah. Like I remember going to the first game of the season and Lane being like, "Why the fuck is Martin Boyle number 10? Like, that just doesn't sit right." And he's just ever since then. I mean, and you think about that period as well. He's came back for 2 cruciate injuries, and he's managed to still maintain his sort of status as the talisman. It's almost hard to think about Hibs now without Martin Boyle. Obviously, we went through that 6 months when he was in Saudi, and it wasn't just his absence, but that was a fucking horrendous 6 months under Shaun Maloney, and we had no sort of credible outball. I think next year he would be eligible. Would you support a testimonial for him? Do you think he'd deserve it? Either one, I'd pick that.
Absolutely. I mean, he's given an awful lot to the club. I think he's one of the players who is, you know, internationally loved by the supporters. You know, say what you want about Lewis Stevenson and Paul Hanlon, the other ones who have had testimonials recently. Obviously, Dave Gray, but he's not playing anymore. But I mean, Martin Boyle, he's loved by everyone. Everyone loves him. When he's not in the team, everyone's like, "Oh, we're missing Boyle today." When he gets injured, we're all gutted. Absolutely deserves a testimonial for everything that he's given at the club. Like I said earlier on, cup winner, scored plenty of goals against Hearts, scored plenty of goals against Rangers, and scored against Celtic as well. So that'll do me.
Shaun, agree?
I think in modern football, I think he will get one. And I think it'll maybe be one of those where it'll be when he's closer to the end of his career rather than being on the actual 10-year anniversary. So it wouldn't surprise me.
As well.
Yeah, and I think for him personally, the type of person that he is, he wouldn't necessarily want one when he's still what he would probably class as his peaker years in regards to his footballing ability. So, especially considering what testimonials are for and everything that comes with them, it'll probably be one that if he probably wouldn't want one at all, but if he used to get one, he would try and delay it as long as possible.
I think when you touched on his goal on Saturday, Shaun, that kind of gives us an indication of what happens when the inevitable pace drops a wee bit. Do you know what I mean? Because he's never going to be as lightning quick. And I mean, what is he 30 now? I think he might be 30.
I think he's 30, aye.
So he's naturally his pace is going to drop over the next 2-3 years. And like you say, that sort of cultured, like that very much was a finish that reminded me of Riordan in the way that Riordan used to hit the ball. Riordan never used to lace it. He always just used to sort of open his body up and look to sort of go beyond the keeper rather than try and hit it through the keeper. if that makes sense.
Just licked it.
But other than that, in the first half, there wasn't really much that happened other than as we can see behind Shaun's head, a penalty shout. Now, Shaun, if you just keep leaning to your right a bit, so
You want me? I'll just go out of shot. I'll just leave
yeah,
if
so
that's what you're trying to get at.
Curtis Guthrie has been crying to the media over the last couple of days, basically saying that he's astounded it wasn't a penalty, that the smaller clubs never get anything against the bigger clubs, that it's a joke, it happens all the time, this, that, and the next thing. I think, as you can clearly see for the image that Shaun's provided, thanks to clearly Livi TV.
By the way, just before you finish your point, Livi TV is the only video that has this as a highlight. Like the normal
it was on Sportscene.
But Sportscene is an extended package.
Yeah.
I mean, as in like available highlights online, SPFL, Hibs, Sky Sports, none of them showed this as a highlight at all. I think that's maybe a point to make.
Yeah, that gives you an insight. So Guthrie's point was that he'd went across the ball to get his body between man and ball, and that he was impeded while doing so. Yeah, as you can clearly see, there is no sort of body between man and ball. In fact, Joe Newell could literally just kick it through his legs if he wanted. And it just, I don't know about Liam, what you thought, because that was up your end at the game.
Yeah.
If you thought it at the time, but obviously I was up at the other end, so I didn't really get a clear view of it. But looking back at it, it's a horrendous way that he's tried to win a penalty. If that was given, like, that's the game's up the pole for me.
Aye, I mean, that he was on the flare more than he was on his feet on Saturday. He was an absolute disgrace when it comes to, I mean, he's got an absolute brass neck to talk about VAR. He was trying to buy fouls left, right and centre. Can understand where he's come from with the VAR thing, but I don't think it's the case that small teams don't get decisions against big teams. I think teams just don't get decisions that they're meant to get, but that is definitely not a decision that should have went to the monitor or should have been given. So he can maybe stop his whinging. If his tears are dried by now, then maybe he can hear me saying, listen, get yourself a fucking haircut before you come out and try and give me any of that shite again, because I tell you what, his hair is an absolute disgrace.
Shaun, do you think that, based on what we spoke about on Thursday, that the thresholds, etc., of what is a foul, what's not a foul, is there a part of you when you think about that it's a surprise that we didn't actually concede a penalty?
I am very, very surprised that was not given as a penalty, and I'm not saying it should be a penalty.
I thought it was more a foul on Joe Newell than it was.
Well, it was given as a foul to us, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Correct, and so it should be.
I can completely understand why he's moaning and why he's groaning, because of the decisions that have been given across the league, not just to the smaller teams, but to all the teams, predominantly certain teams further west than us. But all in all, the way that penalty decisions, we touched on it after the Celtic game, Craig, the way that penalties are getting given at the moment in regards to the threshold and what is and isn't a penalty, based on what's been given throughout the whole league so far this season, that instant behind me is a penalty. I'm still surprised it wasn't given. But to touch on the point that I made after the Celtic game, I don't think they should be penalties, but in the current laws of the game and the current remit of what they give, that's a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, that and another decision that we'll obviously come on to discuss later on has went in our favour for once.
Yeah. Do you think that's probably played into the fact that we weren't given a penalty? Sorry, we didn't concede a penalty. Sort of just goes to sort of reaffirm the point about the consistency of referees, because if that exact challenge and that exact Hibs player, but you swap Guthrie for Sima or Kyogo, you try to say that's not given as a penalty.
It's 100%. It's 100% given. 100% is given, and unfortunately that is the nature of the beast that we have within Scottish officiating. If that happens in the middle of the park, similar to the discussion that we had during the week, it's given as a free kick.
Yeah.
Brian Porteous used to buy fouls like that all over the park. Will Fish has tried to buy a couple of fouls like that this season and got them. Do you know what I mean? Lewis Miller as well has been notorious for buying fouls like that when we've been under the cosh and the team's on the attack. Obviously, the one against Aberdeen in the semi-final didn't go our way, but very similar to the one that's behind me. We've seen it all season. We've seen it for years, that those types of challenges are given as free kicks.
The thing that I'm going to talk about, right, and it comes back to the consistency thing, but we've moaned all season, but how do these refs get better? Do they need to use VAR differently? Do they need to then give the penalty, give the red card, and then go to the monitor and double check? Or, I mean, because it's a joke the amount of things that are being given that aren't penalties or aren't red cards, and the amount of things that are being not given that, you know what I mean? So it's
see for me,
mental.
I think no. Obviously, especially this season, a lot of decisions have been relatively similar in regards to what has and hasn't been given for and against certain teams. I think the problem is, and I think this plays into the part of the consistency, the officiating across the league, is that I think because they're not full time and they don't have the full funding and support that I think they require, they're learning on the job consistently. And I think that's part of the problem, where
We must be one of those only.
They'll learn week on week, and this comes back to like VAR coming in halfway through the season. Like, they brought it in, rushed it in, and then since that moment, whether it's been the officiating on its own or whether it's been VAR, the collective group of Scottish officiating, I think, has been learning on the job as it's went, and then they've had to bring in officials from a lower standard, as in like the Championship, and they've had to promote up from the leagues within, which has then also led to the officiating being slightly worse as well. And I think week on week, that is, or even like game week on game week. So like on a Saturday, a decision will be given or not given, and then we'll see it on the Sunday for one of like the teams that have been in Europe for during the week. They will then get the opposite outcome. And I think it's because at the moment they don't have the right level of support that they maybe need. I know people would maybe argue otherwise in regard to the bias of it and stuff like that, but for me, I think it's more down to the fact that they're learning on the job. So, like, for example, this potentially wasn't a penalty this weekend, but 2, 3, 4, or 5 weekends ago it probably would have been. So they're trying to iron out the issues, which no one wants to hear, because you want the same level of consistency from the beginning of the season to the end of the season.
But the fundamental problem is the fact that all these decisions are so subjective. Like, there's no black and white ruling on whether that is a penalty or not. It's a penalty to some refs. It's not a penalty. Jesus Christ, I'm talking properly. It's a penalty to some referees. It's not a penalty to others, which is where the consistency argument creeps in, and we're seeing it in England as well. I mean, there's a lot of noise about VAR down south at the moment too. So, do we need to just change the way that we use it? Do we need to get the on-field decision for a penalty like that as final, but we can use VAR for offsides and handballs, things that are more, cut and dry, rather than things that are more subjective? Because, like you say, it'll be disallowed or not given on a Saturday, and then on a Sunday when Celtic or Rangers are playing, it'll be given.
Plus, I mean, you look at that penalty versus the that challenge. If you were to show someone with no knowledge of the two games, and you showed the Stevenson one on Alistair Johnson side by side with that one, and you went, what one in your mind is a penalty? I can guarantee that 75% of people would say the Newell one's a penalty and the other one wasn't. Yeah, the Stevenson one was given and this one wasn't. But not to touch on VR for too often, because we're coming the Hibs Varmble and not
The
the
VAR
Ramble.
ramble, you mean?
Varamble. No, Varmble sounds better, to be fair. Second half, nothing really happened.
Big, sorry, just to jump in, just because I didn't get to talk about the Hibs goal very, very, very briefly. I just want to
For fuck's sake, Shaun.
I just want to make a point that I really liked the way that we threatened the Livingston attack in the first half, and the first goal just epitomised what Monty's trying to do in regards to playing through the lines and runners for deep. I don't know if a lot of people noticed it, but we managed to exploit Livy's back line quite a few times, especially for the goal, where we managed to catch out their last defender, and it might not be Venti who's playing on the last man or Boyle that's playing on the last man, but Jair or Ellie Ewan have made that second and third man run, and because they've got the pace and they're running from deep, that final phase of play that I keep rattling on about week in, week out came to fruition quite a lot at the weekend in regards to getting into the final third. So I just wanted to touch on, in my opinion, how successful we were at that. So that's all. But yeah, you can move on to the second half.
To be fair, it was a bit fortuitous in the way it actually bounced the Boyle, but
of course. But
again,
getting into that position was.
We're getting
well
into those positions quite often, to be honest, really, weren't we?
when you're talking about sort of luck, though, Ken, it's always a thing. Luck needs to be on your side. That not getting given, the Livy boy being a millimetre offside in the final minutes, the ball ricocheting to Boyle's feet, like those are the wee bits of luck that we don't seem to usually get. And conversely, you can see why, in a weird way, that has happened against Livingston, because that's the kind of thing that happens to you when you are down and struggling. But second half, nothing really happened from our perspective. Obviously, it was offside goal. Benty at least a yard or two off. But other than that, I felt we weathered.
Can I just get your opinions on that? Because I was of the understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected as being wrong here, but I thought because it hit the guy's back, that completely wipes it out, or is that rule changed again? Because I know every season.
Was he not offside?
It was offside beforehand
when the ball was kicked. So does that not make him offside? I don't know what the rules are.
Because I know in the last 2 or 3 years, the rules regarding like that kind of phase of play, as well as like handballs and stuff, is continually changing. So it's quite hard to keep up with. But like in previous years, because he's not directly impacting in this first phase of the second phase of play, so after it's hit the guy's back or foot, because Benty's not the first person to then interact with the ball, he would have then been onside. I can't keep up with the changes, so I can understand why it was given as offside, because I don't know what the rule is now, and hopefully someone on Twitter or YouTube can correct me and say what that is.
My interpretation of the rule is that if he was offside when the ball was kicked, regardless of if it took a deflection or not, then he's offside.
Yeah,
which should be the rule anyway.
Sean's on the right track. It has changed somewhat. I think it's based on the attacker's position versus so he's practically on the line. So he was offside when the goalie. So when that ball's coming in and the goalie's making that split second call whether to go or stay, they could just turn around and say, well, he's affected the goalkeeper's decision making. That's why the goalie's like stumbled when he's trying to come out for it or what.
Know that the goalie's just thinking.
Yeah. So it's I think there's no question that he was offside.
Correct.
From when the initial cross came in, but again, hopefully somebody can sort of point us in the right direction.
Because I know the rules changed in the last couple of years. They changed 2 or 3 rules before the World Cup, but only implemented it for the World Cup. So I can't really keep track of how it falls and what it falls under now. Because previously there was like phases of play and that came into it as well. So, but listen, I get why. I was just wondering if either of you or if anyone out there maybe clear it up just a wee bit.
I don't know why they've changed it like that though, because that then makes it subjective rather than cut and dry.
No, it probably is cut and dry now. I'm just looking for clarity.
No, but if you bring in phases of play, then 2 people will see phases of play differently, surely.
No, because a phase of play comes when the ball's kicked.
No, but from one point to another, no? From one phase to another.
Well, you've got when the ball's hit, when it hits the guys. So when the ball's kicked, you would then have when the deflection takes place. You would then have when I think it's maybe Martin Boyle maybe goes for it at the front post, which then interferes with the goalkeeper's decision making, and then the last one would then be Venti tapping it in. But
there's effectively 3 phases of play, because you've got the initial cross, which is blocked. That's your first phase. The second phase is Boyle taking control of it and playing it. And then Venti kind of, it's almost like he's at the arse end of the second phase, but begins the third phase because he scores. Again, I'm
Right,
probably
right.
like you, Liam. There's too many fucking ifs, ands, or maybes when it comes to it. It's like this handball rule. Like they've now changed the handball rule that it's only, like I think was it Havertz got a goal disallowed in the last minute at
Aye.
Aston Villa because he handballed it. But if Nketiah had handballed it
It would
and
have counted.
Havertz had scored it, or the other way around, then it would have counted because it wasn't the person who scored.
Got the
sorry,
direct
Yeah.
advantage from the handball.
It wasn't the player who handballed
Oh,
it that
mate.
ended up scoring. So it's
What, mate? Ken, what they're doing? They're digging a hole for themselves with all these rules.
it's
Just
no
make
wonder
it-
fucking
The
it's
ball
no
hits your
wonder the
hand,
rest
it's a
are
free
shit.
kick. If you're beyond the last defender, when the ball's kicked, you're offside, and it should be literally as simple as that. There doesn't need to be 6 or 7 different fucking sub categories.
Listen, the offside is probably as cut and dry now as how you've described it, Liam. I was just curious at the time as to
No,
what
just-
the ruling is now.
Mate, it just annoys me. Like, winds me up.
Yeah.
All the different stupid wee rules for something that is so simple. It's so simple as offside. I mean, and yes, it was offside. The correct decision was reached in the end. Well done, VAR. I mean, you've done your job brilliantly there. But fucking hell, like it just annoys me, Shaun. I'm so sorry.
I don't know about you two, but I'm very much in favour of the Wenger amendment to offside, where a player will only be offside if there's clear daylight between them and the defender.
Yeah.
See, now what do they mean by clear daylight though?
So there would have to be a gap, a literal gap between the defender and the forward for the forward to be offside. Any part of the forward's body that crosses over with the defender, regardless of what angle they're at, they would be classed as onside. Now that would probably lead to, I think it would lead to a lot more goals, but it would also,
You're also slower running with the ball than you are without it as well. So it might, for the slower attackers, it might not have that much of a advantage.
but for an instance like the semi-final with Boyle, like a pinpoint pass, takes the Aberdeen defence completely out, and Boyle's, as is the law, is adjudged correctly to be offside.
Yeah.
But I would like to see that amended. Like, so for example, even though it would have done us on Saturday,
that would have been onside.
Yeah, that would have been onside. And you think that for a few millimetres of, well, obviously it looks like millimetres on when they draw the lines, you don't know how close it or how far away it actually is. But that Sangari's taken an unbelievable touch.
Oh, phenomenal.
To work the space that he actually has. And for him to obviously ended up going in our favour. I'll tell you, it didn't when I seen the fucking ref going over to the monitor, that's for sure. But I see that for me, that feels like that's great attacking play that's being punished for such a minuscule measurement. Like if he was maybe, I don't know, half a yard, then you could kind of get it. But they're literally picking at millimetres. I mean, I don't know what you felt about that, Liam, being in the ground. Obviously, you kind of become accustomed to the fact that the longer the ref's got his finger to his ear, the more likely it's to go to the monitor, and then he does the fucking hand signals to go to the monitor. Were you thinking the worst at that time?
Mate, my arse was biting my leg, because I'd made that that wee graphic that I put on the Twitter on Saturday. I'd made that like weeks and weeks and weeks ago, and I had it saved in the drafts, being like, "Oh, thanks for having us at Livi Official," and I was like, "For fuck's sake, if I don't get to tweet this, I'm going to be furious." So obviously, when it goes to the monitor, I'm thinking, what on earth is going on here? But in the group chat, I'm sure Stu in the group chat said, "Oh, he needs to look at the offside. He needs to look at the offside." Couldn't really tell from where I was sitting. I was sitting at the opposite corner, so it was difficult. I just thought it was a really good save from Marshall, and maybe there was a handball in there somewhere. So when he goes over the monitor, I'm thinking, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" But maybe David Marshall can pull off a penalty save here. But then when I still don't understand what's happened, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't. I was me and Shaun were speaking about it before we came on. It's like when you see these like clips of VR being released from the Premier League down in England, They start, what is it called, the APP, Shaun, like the attacking
Yeah.
phase of play.
Yeah,
So they go
they
back
start
to
at the beginning.
almost, they start at the beginning and they run through to try and find, and I mind that one day when they done it for Romero's red card against Chelsea, and they worked through it and worked through it. Whereas with this one, they almost went, right, it's a penalty, like there's a clear handball, you're going to have to come over at the monitor. But apart, like supposedly it was the ref that was saying, is there an offside? So they actually had to, the VR officials then had to go further back to determine if there was an offside. Like, and then the ref goes to the monitor, and you're thinking, like, well, that's a penalty then. Like the
Would
only
you think
reason they
maybe
go to the
they've sent
monitor
the ref over to the monitor to try and confirm if it's a penalty?
when it was
But
offside.
while they're trying to figure out if there's an offside.
I'll tell you
whereas,
what,
whereas they should be doing it the other way about. Whereas the VAR should automatically, as Craig said, look at the beginning of the first phase of play, which is what they do in the A-League, which was obviously one of the first leagues or bigger leagues to get VAR. That's what we used to do then. So I've seen it loads. They start at the beginning of the phase of play and then they work their way up. So if there's an incident or an issue at the beginning of it, then the rest of it doesn't matter. Listen, it's a great save for Paul Hanlon and fair play to him. But I knew straight away, like, that the boy was offside. Like I could tell for the replays that it was offside. So I was never concerned or worried watching it.
Oh mate, my arse was
But I can
my
understand,
leg.
obviously, being in the ground and that your arse would have been twitching. So they should, like I said, take it from the initial phase. But Craig, like we were saying off air before we started recording, like it's like they've done it the opposite way. So they wanted to get the decision right in regards to is it or is it not a penalty, make that decision, and then work their way back. So it's maybe a mixture of what both of you have said, but what Liam said about it being getting the referee to check, right, okay, you've not given a penalty for this, go and check if you think it's a penalty, well, we're checking the offside. Comes to the right decision. It was offside. It would have been a penalty if it wasn't offside. So fair play, well done VAR, well done Scottish officiating, you've done your job. And thank God for once that it was done right.
To be fair, it feels like that Saturday was one of the first times in a very, very long time that the VAR decisions that were made were the correct ones in all instances, to be honest.
I mean, I know obviously Livi would argue with the one behind, but yeah, no, I'm in agreement. It certainly went in our favour, and I think to bring both those decisions together collectively and individually, those are the right decisions, and they should be the right decisions. But unfortunately, we have been on the end of both of those decisions, those types of decisions going against us. So it was good that for once it didn't, or it did, sorry, go in our favour. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was one of those. It was one of those ones where, as soon as I seen the ref so he's came away from the monitor and he's walked back towards the Livi bench, I'm like, they're not getting anything here. And then I've never celebrated a ref putting his right hand up in the air as much as what I did, because I was absolutely snookered if I was going to spend the worst Saturday of the year sitting in that fucking absolute shithole of a stadium, shithole of a town, watching a shit game in shit weather, for us to get done by a fucking 91st minute handball because Paul Hanlon decided that he wanted to be a goalie for the last 2 minutes. Obviously, he never. That was just the way it happened. But I just
turned out into one of the best Saturdays, considering how the game ended in other parts of the country.
Actually, yeah, but it also was bad because when you come out of the Tony Mac, it's pretty much like, well, it's just pure pitch black. As soon as you know you get away from the stadium footprint, it's pitch black, and I stood in what can only be described as a big muddy mound. So if Liam wants to insert the Darts song here, he's more than welcome to do that, because I know that.
I tell you what, that is superb.
Yeah,
that's
so
the best news I've had all day.
Right up the side of my dunks as well, right on the suede bit as well. So yeah, I wasn't a happy guy. But I just sort of, to wrap up on the game itself before we move on to our other stuff. Hanlon, I thought Liam was solid.
Yeah.
Coming back, and there was always that, I think we said it in the group chat when the team came out and we were like, oh yeah, it's Paul Hanlon up against Joel Newbley, can't wait for this. obviously as it transpires, Newbley didn't get on, but that Guthrie, despite the fact, as you mentioned, he's got horrific hair, he was quite handy, and I thought
Similar kind of player, mate, to be honest. But
I thought Paul dealt with him really, really well, and actually dealt with pretty much anything that came his way.
yeah, I felt the worst when Paul Hanlon's name was on the team sheet, given you know how good Rocky and Fish have been at the back, and when Paul Hanlon has come into the team, he's not been, you know, brilliant, but you know, give him his due. I thought he was fantastic on Saturday. Kept a clean sheet, of course. Really kept that Guthrie boy quiet. I mean, he's a similar player to Newbley, but I just feel like he doesn't really have as much meat on his bones as Newbley does. I feel like Newbley gives him more of an attacking threat. Don't know if maybe he's been injured or something. Maybe that's why he never started. But I thought it was strange that he never played.
Martindale in amongst these tears and snotters after the game, where I don't know if he's seen it, if he's having to go and watch he done like a 14-minute thing on Livi with a Livi social media guy, and there's a point where, kind of obviously because he talks to the reporter and he's like, oh, blah blah blah, and then he looks directly down the camera and he's like, please stick with me, stick with us, please. You can almost see tears in his eyes. So if you've not seen that, go and check it out, because it's obviously
how many times did he talk about budgets and money and AstroTurf?
Well, I was going to say, I listened to his Sky Sports interview, his BBC interview, and then I seen the Livingston one as well. I was like, right, I'm going to watch this to see if there's anything that I can maybe take and clip. And on the Martindale bingo card, on every single one, finances dictate was what? Finances dictate what we can do. I must have heard, like, this budget, he must only have been given a budget of like 3 pence or something, because his budget keeps getting slashed and slashed and slashed and slashed. That's all he spoke about.
Also, why is he talking about lack of training facilities when there's literally pitches at the back of the stadium?
Yeah. Well, that's another thing as well. The whole football elitist. It's like, aye, fucking right, get a grass pitch down. Although, in fairness, what I would say is that Astro, if it wasn't windy, would have actually made for a good game, because Astros, when they're absolutely soaking wet,
You didn't get that every week, Craig. That's
are decent. No, that's when the Astros are soaking wet, they actually play pretty well.
I just think that the sooner that they're out of the league, the better.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of them, to be fair.
And if Kelly are changing their pitch from Astro to grass, then keep them in the league forever. Make them unrelegatable.
What a word that is, by the way.
Cheers,
unrelegatable. And finally, Shaun, David Marshall again with another, superb performance. Is it just, do you think it's maybe confidency or having a actual proper decent goalie coach that's guiding him? Because I don't think it's any coincidence that a new goalie coach comes in with a new manager, and his performances, all of a sudden he goes through being really shaky on the ball when he's got it at his feet, nervous when the ball's coming in his box, to now he's actually really commanding at the minute, and that's not really a phrase that you'd actually associate with Marshall.
No, you've pretty much nailed everything on the head regarding David Marshall. I've obviously been critical of him up until maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks, where he's pulled off some great saves, and I think it does coincide with a little bit of belief, self-confidence in the fact that he'll be getting a better level of coaching day to day. I think a lot of our players have benefited a lot from the coaching team and the management team that were brought in. It was clear to see that he was on a heavy decline under the previous regime, and the quality coaching he was getting, or lack of quality coaching. So long may it continue. Listen, I still feel like we need better in that position, whether it be Wallacott or whether it be another. But at the moment, long may his form continue, and hopefully he goes on the upward trajectory. Yeah,
so a big game going ahead into St Johnstone next week, but we've ticked the one game off. I think every one of us would take the same sort of similar performance next week, as long as we come back down the road with the 3 points. But before sort of moving on to that, I want to touch on something that happened during the week, and something that's kind of
before we move on to that, can we please talk about the pies?
Yeah, the pies will come there, don't worry.
Thank you.
Just as a throwback to mine and Liam's first sort of sojourn together with the Specky hot dog, Melkerson joined Stromgodsect for £1.2 million with a 25% sell-on fee. Like, I know there's patter amongst the support, right, about Ben Kensel being a Cockney salesman or whatever. But I tell you what, how the fuck have we managed to get over £1 million for him?
Here, I'm not being funny, but someone needs to check on that team and just double check that it was Melkerson that they meant to sign. Because
And it was for 1.2 million instead of 120 grand.
Mate, so there has been an administration error there.
I know at the moment there's a guy for the club doing a project regarding a statue for the famous five, but I think we need to scrap that and get a Ben Kensel one, because the amount
just get a big sunbed. Just get
good
cans.
quality
Just
deals that
install
he's
cans
pulled
on the
off
floor or something.
in his time is phenomenal.
One of the names of the stands to the Ben Kensel stand.
I was
the
actually
Ben
quite,
Kensel wheeler dealer stand.
given what he's done with Jair especially, I was actually quite excited for Melkerson potentially coming back in January.
100%.
You can't turn 1.2 million down though
No.
for someone.
No, that's what I mean. It was
zero league goals for Hibs.
I think it was, he never even scored a league goal for Hibs.
That's what I'm saying. 0 league goals.
Oh, sorry. He scored. The only goal he scored were the 2 in the cup at Motherwell.
2 in the cup and then 1 at home against Clyde, I think.
Clyde, aye.
Where he did a backflip.
Yeah.
Aye. But even like you can't be fucking turning down.
No, not at all.
That level of money, and it's suppose it kind of, obviously we wish him the best. It's unfortunate that it didn't work out for him. I don't think he's probably just a victim of circumstance when he came. As he came in the door, Boyle had just went out the door. We were toiling under Maloney. He was thrown in amongst it. He'd never played on grass before, and then obviously
I don't think he was meant to be used so soon.
Yeah,
as he was. So it's maybe a bit of a shame on him. I mean, chances are he'll probably go on and have a half decent career, but it's a shame that it's not going to be at Hibs. But I mean, 1.2 million.
I love him a bit. I think it would have worked out under Monty's regime, considering the way that he plays and the tactics and stuff like that. But like you have said, 1.2 million, unbelievable figure to make a profit on that deal and get obviously 25% sell-on clause as well is phenomenal business. But listen, wish him all the best. Great talent, I think, and hopefully he goes on to have a very, very good career.
Well, it's 1.2 million to add to the coffers that billionaire Bill and the Black Knight Sports Group. Supposedly, there's a good thread on Twitter from I think is it Scott_Miller, or Scott Miller 1, Scott_Miller 1, something like that. That kind of goes through who these guys are, and one of them is a guy. So it's Bill Foley, who so anybody who doesn't know. Bill Foley and his group currently own Bournemouth. Like, Bournemouth are seen as the sort of top team within his stable because they're in the Premier League, and then they've got Lorient that are in France. I'm not sure about. They've just launched. Is it the Auckland Knights or something in New Zealand? Shaun?
Yeah.
Your guess is I am aware of the club, but I didn't know that he was involved in the purchase of the club. Yeah,
so they've just won the rights to a franchise for the A-League for a second team in New Zealand to go alongside. Is it the Wellington Phoenix that are over there?
Yeah.
And then he also owns the Las Vegas Knights, I think they're called, who are an ice hockey team. They just recently won the Stanley Cup. His aim was to win it in 6 years, and he won it in 4 or something like that. But there's serious money involved with these guys. One of the partial investors is worth 9.7 billion, and like
it's all fine and well though. But I think for me, the intentions of it, I'm skeptical about in regards to like how it's going to be distributed, the priorities, where we're going to fall. I think obviously the Gordons will do the right thing, because they clearly have the best intentions of the club at heart. But how that will look in regards to investment and loans, option to buy on our players, the tiering system between us, Lorient and Bournemouth, that's the only part that I'm very sceptical about. Listen, obviously it's all fine and well getting somebody with that amount of wealth to come into the club, but he's only going to have a 24.9% stake that he can. I think that's the max that he can have, and the Gordons aren't going to sell more. And if we're part of a franchise, I don't know what that will look like moving forward. So that's the only issue I have.
I think
Listen, I'm
naturally,
going to blow your scepticism right out of the water, Shaun, by going. I've deliberately not looked at any of this because I knew if I would get the biggest and hardest chub on that I've ever had in my whole entire life, because there's only good things that come with your football team having a lot of money. It's as simple as that. Look at Man City. They won the Champions League last season, Shaun. Man City won the Champions League. They've got a lot of money.
They're owned by
You
a
look at-
state, though, technically, aren't they? So
you look at
Yeah, but
things
still.
like teams that are part of these multi-club groups. You look at Girona; they're sitting top of the La Liga at the minute. Scudded Barca last night.
Melbourne City.
Melbourne City, obviously, Monty swatted them aside last season, but before that, they were pretty dominant in Australia. So it's exciting. I think it's natural, though, that given where they are in the footballing world, that Bournemouth would sit at the top of that sort of franchise or pyramid, if you want to look at it like that. But I do think that we are
They've not been involved in Bournemouth for an
They've not been
awful
there
long
for
time, though.
too long,
They
no.
are
But I
season
think
and a half
given
ago?
the league they play in and the access to the finances that they've got for playing in the Premier League naturally has them sitting sort of at the top of the hierarchy.
definitely.
Although you would get, a lot of Hibs fans that would argue that we're a bigger club than them or whatever. Like,
Well, I mean, thing is, you only need to look at our game against them in pre-season to realise how much of a serious outfit they are.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think they'll be absolutely fine for Premier League survival this season. They look like they're kind of going down the sort of Brighton route with trying to establish themselves as a proper Premier League club for a long time. So hopefully they manage it.
it's exciting though. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of these where I do think from our perspective, we're attractive given that we've probably got the easiest route into European football. If you've got,
It's obviously
in
an
France,
attractor.
they're competing with PSG, Lille, Monaco, Lyon, Nice, Rennes, all of these types of clubs. Obviously, Bournemouth, chances of them getting in Europe are relatively slim, whereas we've obviously got probably the best chance out the group of clubs to be looking at getting into Europe. So it's exciting. We should hopefully know more on Thursday, but do your due diligence on the Black Knight Sports Group and see if we can transfer Shaun's skepticism, because when Monty was one of the names linked with the job, Shaun was tooting all aboard the Monty train. So
worked out quite well, that hasn't it so far?
Yeah.
So you're welcome.
What we need is somebody to turn Shaun from a non-believer into a believer. Not that he's a non-believer, but you know what I mean. Right, moving on. We'll start to wrap up a wee bit. We've got the Piemiership now.
Which pie is the best in the pie review? Which pie is the best in the pie review?
So we'll just go with mines to start with. I just went for the standard steak and gravy. I'm going to go 0 on price because it was like £4. Unacceptable price for a pie, in my opinion.
We can't give
£4.
zeros. We can't give zeros.
Well, I'm giving a 0.
Well, you're not giving a 0 because
Well, it's a 1
it's
then.
a 1.
It's a 1. Price is a 1. Temperature is a 1. It almost burnt my fucking mouth off. Crust is a 1. It was soft. Literally, it was like picking up a sponge underneath. To the point where I was holding it, like my thumb was almost piercing through it. Like when you wipe your arse and your finger fucking just rips the paper. The one that
Sounds like
made
you
that.
had a good day on Saturday.
What
Yeah.
shite paper do you buy?
No, Liam told me that one time. So what have we got? 1 for temperature, 1 for crust, 1 for price because the price was outrageous, 1 for uniqueness because it was shite, and 1 for the filling because I felt like I just had one giant blob of meat in it. So yeah, 5 out of
5 out of
25 for me,
25.
Livy.
Jesus.
5
That
out
is
of
quite-
5.
That's fairly heavy.
And remember, I had an absolutely honking pie away at St Mirren last year, but this
Is
pie
that by
has
far and
tipped.
away the worst pie that you've ever had?
Yeah, from overall experience of pies, yeah, that was fucking atrocious.
Did you say that it was just one blob of meat?
Yeah, just like, so there wasn't like the gravy then with like wee bits of steak. It was just a big fucking, like a big bit of cat food.
Mm.
No.
That's
Yeah.
good.
2 words, not for me.
Mine was the opposite end of the spectrum to you, Craig. Mine was actually really good. I got the macaroni pie because when in Livingston, you obviously need to go for a macaroni. The temperature I've given a 5. It was perfect. Nothing really much else to say about that. I've had a lot of good temperature with my pies this season, so I've been very impressed with a lot of the places that I've been. Crust, I'm giving a 3, Shaun, and I put it was soggy in parts. I wish it was crunchier, although the rim was good and the lid impressed me because the lid was like when you bake cheese in the oven and it goes like that crispy way. It was like that. So that was very, very tasty. Filling, I've gone with a 4 because it was filled to the brim with macaroni. It was cheesy, it was stringy, it was very, very tasty, absolute magic. Really enjoyed it. Price, I've gone with a 4 as well. Now it was £3.50, but I felt like Martin Boyle, it was absolute value for money because it was bigger than you'd usually get and it was absolutely packed. So I was more than happy paying £3.50 for that pie. Uniqueness, though, I've gone with a 2 because macaroni pies are pretty common across the board in Scotland. So that's a 5, 3, 4, 4, 2. So that's 8, 12, 16, 18 out of 25 for Livingston's macaroni pie. So well done, Livingston.
Fuck you, Livingston, is what I say to your pie. Get a grip.
Which pie is the best in the pie review? Which pie is the best in the pie review?
Right, we will sort of start to close off by going through our favourite bit, which is the listener questions.
Now it's time to answer the Hibs Ramble listener questions.
And obviously we'll start the same way that we always start. What's for tea, lads? Thanks to John, obviously, for that one.
Prawn linguine for me.
Wow, absolute shock. I've never been more shocked in my life.
Have you had a shop yet? Is that what you've not done, or?
No, we did a shop on. It was either Sunday or it was one day not that long ago because there was plenty of food in the fridge. I am doing like a homemade Nando's air fryer chicken butterfly sort of deal tonight with peri chips and garlic bread.
Needs the rice, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I've got any rice in the cupboard, but if I do have, I usually get halloumi. Megan doesn't really take halloumi though, so I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna just use half the halloumi, so I always end up using the whole fucking block of halloumi. And the next day, I'm shit for day. I need them.
You can never go wrong with too much halloumi, I think.
Oh, you can, you really can.
Jacket taters with cheese and beans was mine's. A nice solid start to the week tea.
Beans on first or cheese on first?
Cheese then beans.
Yeah, correct.
If you do beans and cheese, you're a fucking wrong'un. And John's also asked, what's the best alternative to a pie?
Oh.
In what sense? Like at a football match, or?
You know, like the football, I would say.
I was really annoyed when we went down to Birmingham for the Villa game, and they had zero food, because I was really looking forward to their steak and chips that they have with an Argentinian spin on it. So that would be the best option. I'm still hoping to try it at a ground somewhere.
I'd go for a pizza like pizza twist or half pizza or
The old Easter Road pizzas, GBNF. GBNF.
smothered in brown sauce.
Yes. Danger Mouse, that one weird guy, has said, what Christmas present would you like to give Nick Montgomery? I don't think the one that I would say is allowed.
A big wad of cash to spend in January.
The luxury of coming on the podcast with us for a chat.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Nick Montgomery, aye. I thought you meant Danger Mouse. Absolutely no. Not a hope in hell. What would I give him? I'd give him...
A right good scene to if he gets a result on the 27th.
Oh, fucking aye, 100%. Ian Russell said, it's nice to see us winning ugly. Too often in the past we would have lost a goal at the end there. I think that's a general consensus from us. We've got one from Rudy on Instagram. Says, VAR came to a raid for once. I think it was a penalty to them in the I think it was a penalty to them in the first half, although some people disagree. And VAR also said us at the end with a good decision for once. I thought Opalai should have been sent off for denial of a goal scoring opportunity. Then it wasn't even shown on Sports Scene, some window. That's a good point. We've not spoke about that. The challenge on Boyle.
I don't think it's a red, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's
I think it's an orange.
Liam, it's one of those ones, one of my favourite ones. It should be a red, but isn't.
Aye. I hate it when you say that.
Yeah, but it's true though. Should be a red, but isn't.
It's an orange, I think.
Yeah, and then one of the last ones we've got, which will actually tie in, is from Paul Mackay. So he's saying it's about Block 7. He's saying about he knows what they're trying to do. However, if no one else knows any of the songs you're singing, does it help the atmosphere? He knew part of the Venti song and a couple of the classics. Tynecastle Falling Down. Stephen Naismith's a fucking clown. It was catchy, didn't get the last two lines of the tune. Don't know if there's any way for Block 7 to communicate or even give fans a wee heads up on these, apart from that 3 points and clean sheet. Well, as we do at the Ramble, we like to get the answers. So we went straight to the source and we messaged Block 7 and we said that, because I think that's been a bit of feedback across social media at times, is that all these new songs, like a lot of guys don't actually know the words, so it's hard to generate an atmosphere to sing along. They've got a Lewis Miller one instead of the Bells How Cafu, it's the Aussie Cafu. And what they're also doing is they're going to start releasing videos on their social media. So they are on Twitter.
I know they've started doing that, and that's helped, especially with the Gyre song.
Yeah. So at Block 7 Hibs on Twitter, if you want to get it there, that's where it'll likely be. I'm not sure if they've got a presence on Facebook. I don't think they do. So yeah, Twitter most likely for that, Paul, and they'll put stuff out.
Can I just say that Block 7 were absolutely spectacular from minutes 1 to 90 on Saturday. They were absolutely jumping, and I don't think there was a point in the game where they weren't making a noise, and I feel like it really helped spur the players on. I'm pretty sure Jair was dancing to his song again during one of the breaks of play. So it's clear that the players and Monty are appreciative of what they're doing. So keep it up, lads.
Yep, and just to touch on regarding Block 7 as well, is that they are currently throughout the month of December helping with the Community Foundation for doing like food, I think like food donations, collections, winter coats, etc. for kids. There have been a presence before the home games recently. At Easter Road, obviously we've not got a home game now until Hearts on the 27th. But I do know that the Community Foundation are still accepting donations. A lot of people don't know that the community hub is still based in what used to be behind the goals in the famous 5 stand. I believe they do 2 sort of lunches a week for local residents or anybody who just wants to go in for a scran and a bit of patter. So if you do have anything to donate, I know that the Community Foundation would be really appreciative of it. You can reach them on Twitter. You've also got Kieran Power, who's the Hibs supporters rep. He's on Twitter. He's very sort of good at coming back to you with things. So if you've got any questions, queries, you want to donate anything, whether it be food, some winter clothes, get in touch with us and we'll pass it on. If you're unsure about how to do it, we'll point you in the right direction. Anything to add to that, lads? No.
Fantastic.
Right,
there's fireworks going on my screen.
Right, just a quick one. Craig Levine and the Merry Band of Shite Bags next Saturday, away in Perth. I'm no looking forward to this one at all, especially with Levine. He's just... It's one of them as well now, because he's been away for Hearts for so long, and I've listened to quite a few of his Sacked in the Morning podcasts. I actually quite like him. But
fuck him.
He's got St Johnstone very St Johnstone-y again,
yeah,
which is the concerning thing for me, added with the fact that it's Craig Levine, and obviously it's away in Perth. I mean, their first half performance against Celtic a couple of games ago now was very, very good. And
very Tommy Wright-esque, isn't it?
Aye, and the game against Hearts away at Tynecastle, they were very unlucky not to get something. Speaking to a few Hearts fans in that as well. So they're back playing the way that you would expect St Johnstone to play, and they're also now playing a way that you would expect a Craig Levine side to play. I am still very, very confident that Monty will get the job done, and he'll get away around it. We've got a phenomenal set of attackers going forward that we're going to pose plenty threats, but then they've got quite a few scumbags at the back, so it'll make for an interesting matchup, that's for sure. Yeah,
on an absolute tatty pitch as well. Tatty field, sorry. Anything to add, Liam, before we wrap up?
I fucking hate St Johnstone.
Yeah, they'd be sort of near the top of my list for clubs to go down. If it wasn't for Livi stinking the gaff out tremendously, I would like St Johnstone to be down there.
Get Livi and St Johnstone out of the league. Get Dunfermline and
Wraith.
Wraith. Get Dunfermline back in the top flight, man.
Yeah,
if only for the ladies.
St Johnstone have got 12 of their 16 points from home as well, which is probably the most concerning part of it as well, especially now that they've got Craig Levine at the helm. So but I still fancy wanting to get the job done. I would back him to get anything done, to be honest. So fair play to Craig Levine for getting them playing, but get it right up him when we scumbag our way to a 1-0 victory at the weekend.
Here's hoping. Well, we'll wrap it up there, lads. Just before we go, the pre-orders for the 89-94 League 7 stuff is now closed. So Liam and Shaun will be working through those orders when they come to us, and we'll get them out to you ASAP. I don't think we've got an exact delivery date for now. So
they're not going to be with you by Christmas.
Yeah.
So I think we're probably looking into start or the middle of January, maybe. Hopefully, I'll speak to the suppliers and see what if they can give us any time frame. But
yeah,
because they're bespoke and made to order, obviously it's a little bit more difficult to stick a timestamp on it.
Yeah, so just keep an eye on the socials. We'll update you as and when they're ready, and then we will potentially look to do a drop too once all the drop one stuff has been sorted and sent out. So if you missed out this time, just get in touch with us and let us know. It's always good for us to gauge this sort of level of interest before committing to putting stuff out. But other than that, have a good week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next Monday.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Let's get ready to rumble.